Hello everyone, my name is Lydia Gunn and welcome to part 2 of my presentation on the economy of Malaysia. Malaysia is actually ranked third largest economy in ASEAN and the 30th largest in the world according to the CIA World Factbook. And the economy in Malaysia in 2012 was about $507 billion, US dollars that is. The average gross domestic productions of Malaysia was actually 6% since it gained its independence from Britain in 1957. We expect the growth of GDP to be about 5 to 5.5% in 2014. The ex-prime ministers of Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad, actually outlined the visions 2020 in 1991, and in it says that Malaysia is to become a self-sufficient industrialized nation by the year 2020. And then later on, the current Prime Minister of Malaysia, his name is Najib Razak, he actually said that he had no doubt that that's his picture is right there at the bottom, and he actually says that Malaysia could achieve the industrialized nation status by 2018, which is 2 years earlier, and he gave some reasons for it. That's because Malaysia has a couple of programs. First one is known Government Transformation Program. Second one is known as Economic Transformation Program. Which actually focus on 4 national key economic areas like energy, palm oil, financial, and private healthcare. The government transformation programs are supposed to address 7 key areas, and a couple of areas are the reducing the crime and fighting corruption. There's the pictures of Malaysian police forces, and then the next focus is on improving student outcomes. These are the school uniforms of Malaysians school girls in primary schools. And then other areas to focus on is raising the living standards of the low-income households, improving the rural basics infrastructures like access to clean and treated water, and also improving the urban living, transportation, as well as addressing the cost of living. That basically translates into inflation. Malaysia is now finding high inflation rate in the last few months. This is the economic indicators of Malaysia. I'm putting it side by side between Malaysia and US. So the GDP real growth rate is about 5.6%. As compared to 2.2% in the US. And the GDP per capita, which is what we call standards of living, is about 17,200 per year in US dollars, and it's ranked 78 in the world. As compared to US, 50,700 per year, which is ranked about 14 in the world. The gross national savings, Malaysian economy save approximately 34% of GDP as compared to only 10% of GDP in the US. Next, the unemployment rate in Malaysia is considered very low, about 3% as compared to 8.1% in the US. Inflation rate, as I mentioned earlier, in the latest figures I have here in March of 2014 is around 2.1%. And that's more or less the same as what the US has right now, 2.1% as well. And population below poverty line, US is about 15.1%, and Malaysia has much lower percentage, like 3.8%. That will give you some ideas of how the economy of Malaysia has fared so far. In the 70s, the predominantly mining and agriculture-based economy began to move towards the more multi-sector economy, focusing on industrial growth. The economy recovered from 1997 Asian financial crisis earlier than some of the neighboring countries in Southeast Asia did. And part of the credit goes to the ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir. He actually imposed a capital and currency controls, fixing the exchange rate at about $1 to 3.8 Malaysian ringgit. And that seems to have contained the foreign exchange speculations and was able to bring the nations back from recover from a financial crisis, like I said earlier, than other neighboring countries in Southeast Asia did. There's some extent of economic inequalities among the various ethnic groups in Malaysia. The Chinese make up about 1/3 of the population, but accounted for about 70% of the country's market capitalization. Some of the key areas that the government would like to focus on, the sectors, as I mentioned earlier, the energy sector and the palm oil sector, healthcare sectors, and so on. Petroleum is one of the major exports of Malaysia. And actually in 2010, a few years ago, it actually consists of make up about 20% of Malaysian GDP. Malaysia was once, has been once the largest producer of tin, rubber, palm oil in the world. The exports of Malaysia, manufacturing make up about 25% of GDP, and financial sector about 15% of GDP in Malaysia. Who are some of the export partners of Malaysia? Malaysia exported to countries like Singapore, China, Japan, US, Thailand, Hong Kong, India, and Australia. In the year 2012, Malaysia was ranked number 24 in the world in terms of the value of exports, about 247 billion US dollars. And what are some of the things that Malaysia exports to other countries? These are semiconductors, electronic equipment, about 43%, petroleum and liquefied natural gas, about 11.6%, chemicals and plastic products, 10.4%, iron and steel and metal products, about 6.3%, and so on and so forth. And Malaysia, of course, also exports rubber products and wood products as well. Textile, a little bit of that. Now that you've looked at the export partners of Malaysia, let's take a look at who are the import partners of Malaysia. If you look at this pie chart, it looks more or less the same as the one you just looked at, because there are four major trading partners. In this case, import partners are pretty much the same top four. China, followed by Singapore, Japan, and US. China make up about 15% of the US Malaysian import partners, followed by about 13% from Singapore and 10% Japan and 8% US. And what are some of the things that Malaysia imports from these countries? Pretty much the same thing that you saw, same list that you saw earlier. Semiconductors, electronic equipment, palm oil, petroleum, liquefied natural gas, wood and wood products, rubber, textiles, chemicals, solar panels. These are some of the examples of the things that Malaysia imports from other countries. And in year 2012, Malaysia was ranked number 27 in the world in terms of the value of imports, about 182 billion US dollars. As you can see, the figures you had just now for exports and imports, export figures are bigger than the import figures. That means Malaysia has a trade surplus rather than a trade deficit. Another key area of economic focus is the financial sector. And in fact, the Malaysian ringgit, the exchange rate right now is about $1 to 3.28 Malaysian ringgit. Malaysian ringgit was considered as number 2 best performing currency in the past month in Asia. So these are some pictures of Malaysian ringgit. You can see about 50 Malaysian ringgit there, which is roughly about 15 US dollars. And that's the pictures of the money exchange counter in Malaysia. And as I mentioned earlier, that in 2014, which is this year, Malaysia is trying to fight inflation. The cost of living has been going up, and actually in 2013, last year, the wages grew a lot faster, about 6% on average than the inflation rate. Inflation rate was about 2.1% last year. But then beginning this year, the consumer price actually rose by 3.4% from January. And this is one of the fastest rise since October of 2011. So as you can see, Malaysia is facing some inflation right now. And what are some of the things that the government do to contain inflation? They provide subsidies in terms of food, fuel, electricity, education in more recent months. And then another thing that they do is the Central Bank of Malaysia, known as Bank Negara, actually try to hold the overnight policy rate, interest rate at about 3% in March 2014. This came out just sometime last week, so fairly recent. And all these measures actually had helped to contain the inflation in Malaysia right now. 60% of the population of Malaysia is Muslims, as I mentioned in the other slide. And because of that, Malaysia is actually developed into a center for Islamic banking. And also, if you look at the statistics, Malaysia also has the highest number of female workers in this particular industry. Now, another key areas of economic focus is the private healthcare. The healthcare expenditure in Malaysia was only about 4.4% of the GDP as compared to 18% in the US. Malaysia has become one of the top medical tourism destinations. In year 2012, it had about 670,000 foreign patients flowing into the countries of Malaysia. These are some of the pictures of private hospitals that I took while I was on vacation in the last few years. And this is Prince Court Medical Center. And this is inside Subang Jaya Medical Center, one of the MRI machine. And this is Makuta Medical Center in Malacca. Like I took this picture last year when I was there. Glen Eagles Hospital was actually named International Hospital of the Year by International Medical Tourism Journal recently, in the last month or so. Malaysia has also introduced a program known as Malaysia My Second Home program. And under this particular program, it allows the foreigners or visitors to stay in Malaysia on a long-term visa up to 10 years. However, you have to have a minimum investment amount of about 130,000 US dollars if you're less than 50 years old. And if you're more than 50 years old, the requirement is not as stringent, and they make it a minimum investment amount of 108,000 US dollars. And interestingly enough, United States is considered one of the top foreign investors of Malaysia, capture about 42%, which is a big percentage. And this is being followed by the country of South Korea, a distant second of 15%. So it is an interesting country, and I hope you enjoy my presentations. Thank you very much for your attention and your time.